Of that amount of money, the AGOA agreement accounts for 3.6 billion rand. And it's not true that the AGOA thing is in the favor of big companies, etc. If AGOA goes wrong, it is ordinary workers in the agricultural sector, in the automobiles sector. It will be ordinary workers that will lose their jobs. We cannot and we should not have that kind of situation. The problem is that our relationship with the United States is not in a good place at the moment. And it's not true that it suddenly changed now that Mr. Trump became the President of the United States. That's not correct. Under the Biden administration already, there was an agreement, a bipartisan agreement, to have the total relationship between South Africa and the United States revalued. A bill was passed in the Congress in July of last year to do exactly that and to look at our relationship with the United States. And it was passed a bipartisan bill with both Democrats and Republicans. The problem is this. The United States identified from their perspective that Russia, China, Iran and North Korea are their biggest threat to the United States' national security. And we must take note of that. When we continue to be a problem in that regard and try to create an impression that we want to be friends with all the people that the United States believe to be not on their side in terms of policy, in terms of national interest, we are creating our own problems. Maybe we should learn and take a lesson from Mr. Modi from India. India is a senior player in the BRICS alliance, senior partner there. But Mr. Modi visited the United States recently after Mr. Trump's election. He signed a very important trade agreement with the United States that also includes the delivery of weapons, etc., for the economy of India. What did he do? Mr. Modi did put India first. And my appeal would be to the Minister of International Relations, let's put South Africa first. Let's do what's in the best interest of our own country, our own citizens, and act in that manner. We don't have to choose sides for this and against that. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is the Honourable Trollip.
That we are having this debate today is a tragic legacy of 30 years of ill-considered and ill-fated choices made by this government. Churchill said about Britain's decision to sign the Munich Agreement in 1938, and I quote, "You've been given the choice between war and dishonor. You have chosen dishonor, now you will have war," close quote. The ANC have systematically chosen dishonor in their one-eyed international relations, and now we are going to suffer the consequences of these choices. Again, the fashionable acronym FAFO springs to mind. You've told Trump to leave us alone. One of your GNU ministers stood here and gave him the finger. Now we are alone. Naledi Pandor did everything conceivable to insult, infuriate and alienate the USA while she was the Minister of International Relations. Yet she was the first to encourage the government to send envoys as quickly as possible to try and salvage our relationship with the USA. Amazing. Nomvula Mokanyana infamously said, "When the rand falls, we'll pick it up." When are you going to pick up the rand? The president said, "I'd rather be seen as a weak president than split the ANC." Well done, you've achieved both. But look what your philosophy of putting the party first and the country second has bequeathed us. You will blame AfriForum and Solidariteit for Trump's punitive executive orders and possible repeal of AGOA. This scapegoating, though convenient, doesn't hold any water. Incidentally, who the hell do AfriForum, Solidariteit and the DA think they are anyway? Who granted them SA envoy status to go cap in hand to canvass for the protection of minority rights in the USA? Something that never existed for majorities before 1996. These protections in our Constitution and Bill of Rights far exceed the protections of minorities in the USA. A former leader of the opposition wrote this weekend that AfriForum has been peddling years-long racially divisive disinformation campaigns. Where are the real SA envoys? Javier Milei recently said at Davos, and I quote, "Argentina faced 100 years of systematic economic failure as a result of taking weak stances on major global conflicts and as a result of having closed ourselves off to trade. We lost practically all international significance. Argentina has been infected by socialism for too long, and that it would once again embrace the ideals of freedom, defense of life, liberty and private property, close quote. The world has embraced Argentina's commitment to these ideals and as an example of fiscal responsibility to their collective advantage. Yet, you have chosen the exact opposite and wonder why we are facing global isolation, distrust, and unprecedented poverty. Millet also said, and I quote, "The only thing that socialism produces is poverty," close quote. Yet we steadfastly adhere to this failed philosophy. We have become so dependent on foreign aid from wherever we can get it that the termination of US aid and PEPFAR will have deadly consequences. You couldn't balance your budget 2 weeks ago, and now you've got an additional 8.7 billion rand for HIV AIDS program shortfall. Have your newfound international friends and the US enemies Iran that you were posing with this week and our BRICS partners offered any assistance? No, I thought not. Because they've been beating a path to the Oval Office to ingratiate themselves with the New World Order Tsar. And they aren't interested in our self-inflicted wounds. They will only compound our economic travails and poverty. It's time to reevaluate our so-called non-alliance stance, pick a side in the New
Honourable
World
Member,
Order,
your time
or face
is now
further
expired.
calamity.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Meshu.
House Chairperson, on February 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order suspending all US aid to South Africa, citing concerns over the country's land expropriation laws, which the US administration alleges discriminates against Afrikaners. The ACDP believes this decision was based on misinformation and misunderstanding, as the Expropriation Act 13 of 2024 does not explicitly single out anybody, particularly Afrikaners. Its implementation, however, has raised concerns due to historical land ownership. US aid is given to gain strategic partnership and promotes America's values, such as democracy and human rights. It is also given to encourage trade and investment in developing markets that benefited the US. Among other things, it is also given in response to natural disasters, hunger, and health crises, all of which contribute to South Africa's economic, political, and environmental stability. House Chair, it would be foolish to respond arrogantly to this suspension, while we decry the speed at which the withdrawal of US aid was made, creating an income and health crisis for thousands of South Africans. It nevertheless highlights the enormous debt of gratitude we should have for the aid we have received from the US. The ACDP urges government to engage in bilateral talks with the US administration in the hope that our soft approach would send a clear message that South Africa is ready for business and consequently attract much needed investments from them, and see suspended programs reinstated and have life-giving aid speedily restored. House Chair, the ACDP agrees with Archbishop Jackson Ole Sapid, who of the Anglican Church of Kenya, who reportedly said that the freezing of US aid should be viewed as an opportunity for the African continent to work hard towards becoming self-reliant. Yes, Africa should learn to stand on its own feet and reduce their dependency on Western handouts. The ACDP also agrees with some Ugandan economists who view the freezing of foreign aid as a catalyst for exploring alternative revenue sources and reimagining the continent's economic trajectory. Lastly, I want to appeal to President Cyril Ramaphosa to start condemning the slaughter and persecution of Christians, particularly on the African continent. He knows about thousands of Christians who have been killed for their beliefs, some who were beheaded.
Honourable
by
Member,
Boko
your
Haram.
time is now expired. Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Kwankwa.
My fellow South Africans, we have to distinguish between the people of America and the actions and the chaos that has been unleashed on the world and South Africa and Africa by a group of unregenerate racists who hate us for being Africans, who think they can abuse us. History speaks for itself. It was George W. Bush, a Republican, who gave us PEPFAR, pulling millions of our brothers and sisters back from the brink of HIV/AIDS devastation. It was Bill Clinton, a Democrat, who teamed up with the Republicans to deliver AGOA, a trade deal that has put food on the tables and the dignity in homes of many South Africans and Africans. Even in the dark days of apartheid, of Ronald Reagan, especially in America, the US Congress rose overwhelmingly in support of efforts that were intended to make sure that they passed the Comprehensive Anti-Apartheid Act in 1986. Back then, the relationships we had with America in particular were based on principles of mutual respect and reciprocity, despite our differences. Today, we confront an urgent crisis that tests this legacy, either for the good of our sovereignty or for the detriment of our people. Our government's choice will seal our fate, but whatever we do, we must not allow ourselves to be bullied, as President Ramaphosa said during SONA. With PEPFAR's 8 billion rands taken from our HIV/AIDS fight, UniAIDS estimates about 222,000 patients, including about 8,000 children under the age of 15 years old, who face disruptions in their daily antiretroviral supplies, therapy supplies. But let's not gloss over this. Quite a significant chunk of these resources, Mr. Minister, seem to have gone to administration in terms of instead of the tangible programmatic work. We should take this moment as an opportunity to pause and reflect, not just for South Africa, but for all of Africa. We must encourage partnerships, encourage investments, trade deals that work for us, work with us, not for us. The fact that, for example, after 20 years since PEPFAR was launched, we still depend on foreign aid primarily for survival with respect to some of the programs in our healthcare system, points to challenges that we have not been able to address many years ago when it intended to fill this gap. Our reliance on external funding has now left us at the mercy of the decisions made in distant capitals that have no regard for the situation in our countries. We have to make sure that we use our contingency reserves to fund and plug this gap before lives slip away, and consider increasing taxes in order for us to be able to serve the needs of the people who are most affected by this funding shortfall. Other issues we need to do as South Africans, we need to address the setup cost of manufacturing facilities.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired. The next speaker is the Honourable Zibi.
Thank you, House Chair. We are witnessing the development of a powerful, cruel, fascist dictatorship in the largest economy in the world. But this is a dictatorship of a special type, one that wants to destroy democracy as an idea and practice all over the world. They are trying to do the same here, and they are trying to do the same in Europe. If Canada and Mexico can be treated in the way that we are seeing, then who are we? If they can meddle in German and British politics, then why would they leave us alone? As the President said in his State of the Nation address, we must never allow ourselves to be bullied. But we must also recognize the global moment we are part of. The second coming of Trump will reshape the geopolitical map and bring into existence conflicts and alliances we have never thought possible. This is why we must not allow ourselves to be distracted from making pragmatic decisions in South Africa's interest. The West, as we have known it until now, is over. The US is isolating itself from its traditional friends, so we must look at alliances of mutual interest a little differently than we have before. Together with many of our trading partners, we face the same threat. A group of fascists who run the US, for whom cruelty and domination is the point, not just a method. The actions announced by President Trump some weeks ago have been in the works for nearly 10 years. They were just waiting for the right government to come into office. They are driven by a sophisticated disinformation ecosystem. Digital analysis of the social media accounts that have sown this disinformation shows that over 70% of the discussion on so-called white genocide and land grabs has been by accounts in the US and Eastern Europe rather than in South Africa. It is not just AfriForum who are part of this network. There are paid political influencers here in South Africa who work with that network. Many are unknowingly followed on Twitter by members of this House. South Africa is light years behind what countries like Finland are doing to prevent the destruction of their national consensus by this kind of disinformation. It is a national security threat that I do not believe our security services are even remotely equipped to deal with. Otherwise, we would have legislation before this House to deal with it. When the budget is tabled in just over a week, the finance minister must show us what cabinet has decided to do to build strategic options for our nation. That is a matter of necessity and national security. And Honorable Lamula, President Magangai White House is our please.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Webster.
Honourable House Chair, we must reiterate the context within which this debate takes place. This debate takes place at a time where there's a shift in the global order in the world as multipolarity gains steam and there's new centers of power that are emerging. Those who have long dominated the world stage are now scrambling to reassert their dominance. And that is the context, that is what is happening. The recent developments that have taken place between the US and South Africa and in the relationship between the two countries have to be understood in this context. And the pronouncements by US President Donald Trump reflect an agenda that seeks to maintain an outdated global hierarchy. But history teaches us that true change has never come without disruption, and that's what's happening now. South Africa has to remain steadfast in a pursuit of a just multipolar world where no single power, not the US, not Russia, not China, dictates the terms of our own sovereignty as a country. That said, the United States is an important economic partner, and our trade relationship cannot be understated. Its importance can't be understated, but at no point should our sovereignty be conditional on the approval of any other nation. The responsibility of this government is to then shield South Africans, because now it has happened and the ship has sailed. And this is not just in response to the US decisions, but it's through long-term strategies that protect South Africans. The recent freeze in US aid to South Africa should be a wake-up call to us. It exposes a fundamental risk in that a sovereign nation finds itself vulnerable to the policy whims of another. So South Africa must position itself to be part of a multipolar world, diversifying partnerships, engaging in multilateral trade, and we must never be placed in a situation where the withdrawal of funding from one country disrupts our economy and the delivery of critical services. So the solution is clear. Our government must take decisive steps forward in self-sufficiency, and that means reducing reliance on external aid. It means ensuring financial discipline, but most importantly, it means eradicating corruption and poor governance that continue to cost us our independence in South Africa. A nation cannot claim sovereignty if its economic stability hinges on external generosity. We must take ownership of our own future. And South Africa must engage with the world from a position of strength and not dependency. We must invest in our domestic industries and in innovation. And if we are part of a multipolar world, we must build a self-sufficient and resilient state. It's time to build a South Africa that stands firm, that can engage on equal terms with other nations and that can secure its rightful place in an evolving global order. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Zungula.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we need to remind people that we are a sovereign country and our sovereignty must mean complete independence. Any country that gives us aid must supplement our own initiatives as a country. We must never allow aid to be used to undermine our national interest. The halting of aid by the US is in response to us addressing historical injustices of land dispossession, which is widely recognized. Therefore, it is clear aid is not really about genuinely helping a country. It is about managing a country to govern itself in a manner that serves the imperialists. We should never allow our sovereignty and national interest to be undermined by those who give us aid. Those who give us aid want the status quo of inequality, poverty, landlessness, unemployment, and all the evils of apartheid to remain unchanged. We need to close ranks and unite and pursue total transformation of our country. We can't be dictated by other countries on how we must correct our domestic problems that emanate from the over 400 years of colonization and apartheid. We are in this position of aid being used to manage us because we don't own the land, the natural resources, and the economy of our country. We are still conquered even though we got democracy in 1994. What we must do now is to leverage our mineral resources instead of begging for validation and money from the US. Why are we even needing aid, yet we are rich in mineral resources? Why is the mineral wealth of our country not owned by the state on behalf of the people? Why is the wealth of our country owned by the Americans, the British, and the Europeans? Yet in the communities, when the minerals are mined, there is poverty and disease. We must be a generation that corrects this. The mineral wealth of the country must be owned by South Africans so that we never need aid from anyone. But make no mistake, this is just the beginning. Today it is aid. Tomorrow Trump will move against trade. We must be prepared because the US wants to keep South Africa and Africa in a position of economic submission where our prosperity is always tied to their approval. We cannot allow this. We must aggressively expand our trade relationships beyond the US market. The African continent presents immense opportunities. The BRICS alliance is open for business. Why should we continue to rely on those who see us as nothing than a pawn in their global chess games? Lastly, Chair, if the country was serious, AfriForum and Solidarity would have been long charged with treason. GNU, Niwasabani Amabu.
Honourable Member, your time has now expired. Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Abrams.
Thank you, House Chair. This decision to withdraw US aid represents a critical moment for South Africa. It is a moment that calls for unity to work together to overcome this healthcare crisis. The Democratic Alliance has consistently advocated for foreign policy that puts the well-being of South African citizens first and advances South Africa's strategic interests while fostering productive international relationships. Over the past decades, this has not always been the case, and now we face the rapid dismantling of 2 decades of progress in healthcare, particularly in HIV and AIDS and TB, along with the closure of the UN World Food Programme in Johannesburg and the withdrawal of aid to NGOs that provide services to refugees and asylum seekers like the Scalabrini Centre just across the road. For millions of citizens, this is not about politics, it is about survival. When you wake up each day fighting to exist, debates about ideology or whether aid comes from the East or the West mean nothing. The impact on vulnerable households is devastating. The impossible choice between food or electricity, school shoes or transport now becomes a debate between medication or death. While certain political parties may welcome the withdrawal of Western influence and funding, remember, it is not anyone at this podium or in this dome who will suffer. It is the orphan child in the rural clinic denied life-saving treatment, the young mother unable to access prenatal ARVs, the family solely dependent on their grandmother's social grant denied access to TB treatment, the approximately 15,000 jobs and counting which will be lost, affecting 15,000 households. House Chair, the reality of the matter is that babies will be born with HIV and lose a parent or both to a preventable disease. Crucial services offered by NGOs in health education, emotional and psychological counseling, regular HIV testing, and awareness programs will be significantly reduced, running the dangerous risk of defaulting back to the days where the medical advice from the government at the time was garlic, beetroot, and the African potato, or worse, that showering after sexual intercourse will minimize the possibility of contracting HIV. And while provinces attempt to mitigate the impact of expanding services for collection of ARVs at public healthcare facilities, many will not go for fear of stigmatization. Does government honestly believe that orphan children with HIV will make their own way to clinics? This was the crucial role filled by now defunded NGOs. Where will we find billions of rands to fill the gap? Now more than ever, we need to redirect funds from countless wasteful vanity projects like the 28 million spent on NHI advertising, VIP protection, and failed SOE bailouts to save lives. The upcoming budget speech carries heightened anxiety as we await solutions to this crisis. This is why the DA has presented credible budget alternatives that address the plight of the marginalized while creating jobs and stimulating growth. House Chair, the loss of US aid is a severe setback, and the humanitarian impact only quantifiable in months and years to come. However, by adopting the DA's model of good governance, attracting investment, and building new partnerships both domestically and internationally, we can mitigate this impact. We must mitigate this impact. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sokanyele.
House Chair, honourable members, I stand before you to engage on a fundamental feature of any prosperous society, a well-functioning health system. It is fundamental because it affects everyday realities of our people and is a basic human right. We must point out that we have made great strides in our healthcare system. The accessibility on our public health programs has significantly increased over the past 30 years. Far more people have now access to basic healthcare facilities than before, and awareness and health-related matters is higher thanks to our healthcare campaigns and vaccination drives that Dr. Motsoaledi have talked about. But nevertheless, there are millions of South Africans living in rural areas who continue to face inconveniences and frustrations caused by inadequately run and supplied public health facilities. This we must acknowledge and intend resolving. We are now building on the foundation through the National Health Insurance, the next great step forward in transforming our healthcare system. The NHI will ensure that access to quality health is not determined by one's economic status or class, but by the fact that one is a human being worthy of excellent health care. Health and well-run healthcare system, honourable members, is an integral part of development. There can be little likelihood of thriving and prosperous nation if half of its population suffers ill health. Therefore, we have woven healthcare into our central trust of overall development so that we can contribute on a world stage. We do so from a strong position. South Africa is not an isolated entity. We are members of an international community, and our well-being is entwined in the development everywhere else in the globe. Our foreign policy is rooted on the principles of sovereignty, non-alignment, and multilateral cooperation. We are open to speak with all nations and institutions that respect our sovereignty and share our vision of world that is just and equitable. Therefore, we continue to speak up for multipolar world where no single nation or bloc of nations determines the development path of another. We form relations that are premised on mutual respect and collaborations as equals. The withdrawal of foreign aid that has affected our country may be seen as crisis by some, but a crisis is also an opportunity. We have an opportunity to move rapidly towards greater self-resilience and greater collaboration and interdependence among developing nations. We have incredible resources, both material and human, and must fully leverage these to plug any funding gaps that become apparent. We must work especially on intra-African cooperation, ensuring that as a continent we are not left behind and vulnerable because of shifting in preferences of global powers. The volatile international scenario can have an influence on our healthcare system. Apart from the withdrawal of the funding of certain programs, we can also be affected by fluctuations in international markets and disruption in global supply chains. This is one of the reasons we are so geared maintaining cordial trade and diplomatic relations with a diversity of partners. It is the only way to ensure a steady supply of certain essentials and ensures mutual strengthening in multitude of ways. Specifically, our participation in key multilateral institutions has allowed us to keep pushing for fair access to medical resources for developing countries. Honourable members, we have a vision of a nation where every man, woman and child has access to the best quality service, including healthcare services. We have made great strides forward, but we still have a way to go. Our healthcare system is not perfect, but we see progress that no one can deny. We are now at a point where efforts are intensifying as we move towards implementation of NHI. As a nation, we cannot depend on others to define our path. We have knowledge, we have resources, and the will to shape our own future. We also have strong alliances that involve mutual growth and knowledge exchange for strengthening our neighbors and ourselves. We have what it takes. Let us therefore move forward with confidence, not just talking, but acting in a concrete way of expression our vision of just, well-functioning nation with excellent, easy-to-use healthcare system among many other working systems. We have partly achieved our goals, honourable members, not fully. Dr. Motsoaledi has talked to that. I think he was very explaining how many funds we have used out of our own pocket, not depending to US aid. Let us push forward with hope, knowing that we have long passed the stage where talking is done. The only thing that satisfies is action on delivery. What we said, we will do. For this, we need a whole lot more than good intentions. We need professionalism, high level of competence, rooting out all corruptions, and high levels of efficiency in the public system. I urge all our members, department and staff to take this call seriously. We can do this, honorable members, if we keep our focus on serving the people who confidently put their trust in us to listen and respond. Let the excellence and efficiency become our watchwords. Our people deserves nothing less. We are there for the people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Sali.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I'd like to thank the Honourable Julius Malema for this debate. The decision by the United States government to halt aid to South Africa and the response thereto in his State of Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa stated South Africa will not be bullied. Whether he was referring to the United States or not, it is a strong message to those in the bullying game. At the same time, the 90-day withdrawal or threat from a delirious Donald Trump should serve as a wake-up call to South Africans that we should end our reliance on countries that are on the wrong side of history. I quote the Ghanaian President, Mahama, who reiterated, there is a need for African countries to become self-reliant. We acknowledge that international assistance has supplemented the country healthcare programs. Thank you. But we cannot allow South Africa to become totally dependent on foreign aid all the time. Being dependent compels us to agree to decisions which will put us on the wrong side of history. Al-Jamaa calls on the government to look at ways to increase the health budget for more healthcare workers to be employed at hospitals equipped with necessary resources and funding. We must strive to work towards a self-sustaining system and not depend on foreign donors who assume they can dictate to South Africa and to be party to a genocide and expect us to be silent. Healthcare is a fundamental right, and we cannot allow the lives of South Africans to be endangered because of threats from foreign aid organizations, even entities within our own countries, such as AfriForum. Leaders, countries such as US and Trump supporters who are on the forefront of aiding and abetting a genocide in Palestine. Why would they care about AIDS in South Africa? The masks are off. South Africa, this is your opportunity to become independent and to work with countries who are already reaching out. South Africa needs to actively take to task legally entities such as AfriForum, their counterparts, alongside those individuals who is yet to be investigated and prosecuted, who have served in the IDF and committed genocide in Palestine. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Adams.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Minister, the Progressive Caucus, the 9 wasted months. I wish to start my 3 minutes with a speech from a man who would one day become a minister in this country. And I open the quote by saying, we want the land. Without the land, we are not free. Ask the Palestinians. Close quote. Thank you, Honourable Minister Gayton McKenzie. I cannot believe that this country has allowed a convicted sexual predator, a pathological liar, a man with no morals to speak to us in this way. But then again, Trump feels comfortable speaking to South Africa in this way because you people couldn't even deliver the budget on time. It is disgrace that we are even having this debate because this is South Africa. This is not a colony of the of America. We do not need America's money. Just manage what we have better. As a matter of fact, because of your mismanagement of the fiscus, you think nothing about putting VAT up by 2%, killing our poor. Trump pays for the bombs that kills Palestinian children. You think he cares about South African children dying of HIV? The man does not. South Africa can do better. South Africans deserve better. The land expropriation we speak about offends Trump to the point that he withdraws aid. Are we tenants in this country? Does he pay us so that Steenhuisen can live on my land? I think not. Land must be expropriated. Let Trump keep his money. Let this waste of 9 months called the GNU give us our land back. We will show you how we profit from it while living on it. We do not need Trump.
Point of order.
Oh, there's a point.
Yes.
Mr. America himself.
No. Let me hear the honourable member. Please proceed, honourable member.
The honourable member has cast aspersions on me, House Chairperson, by saying that I'm living on his land.
Order. Order, honourable members. Order.
I would, if that is...
Order, honourable members.
You
Order.
are, Pastor John, you are.
Now, take your seat, honourable Adams. Yes, the point of order, honourable Steenhuisen.
If that is the case, then he's not entitled to any land because I don't own any land.
No, honourable Steenhuisen. Honourable Steenhuisen. Let me just remind members that we should firstly refer to each other in honourable terms. Right? Let's do that. Refer to each other in honourable terms. We can't just call a person by his name or surname. Right? Please proceed. The rest of it is a question for further political debate.
Speaker, ultimately, this country needs to show that it has a conscience. Our stance on land expropriation is for our poor. Our stance on Israel is for the international community. Trump cannot write our speeches. I want to offer my apology to the President of the ATM. For the first time ever, I will disagree with you, Honorable Vuyo. We cannot charge AfriForum with treason. It is impossible to charge a joke with treason, and I thank you.
Thank you, honourable member. Honourable members, I now recognize the Honourable Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform.
House Chairperson, the sponsor of the motion, Comrade Malema. Our country, our people, our leaders, and our economy is under attack. There is no doubt that soft power is being used to divide our nation, to weaken the organs of our democratic state, and to impose regime change. This special debate is an opportunity to affirm and express our belief in the necessity for a patriotic nation in the face of these attacks. In affirming this patriotism, let us distinguish between the attacks from outside and those that operate as an enemy from within. American imperialism is built and fueled by lies. It is lies such as Saddam's possession of weapons of mass destruction that caused the deaths of millions of Iraqi citizens. And the lies have always been used by the empire to justify murder of millions of our people. We are proud of this democracy because we came to this point as a result of the service, suffering, and sacrifice of our leaders. Tomorrow, Chair, will be laying to rest a PAC veteran, Tata Mark Shinas. He was imprisoned for 2 terms on Robben Island, sacrificing 20 years of his life to fight apartheid and bring us the democracy we enjoy today. He is an example of a true and genuine patriot. It is because of the sacrifices of people like Mark Shinas and thousands of others that we enjoy the freedom we have today. This freedom is now being abused by these unpatriotic elements amongst us. Let us honor these courageous comrades who suffered and sacrificed their lives by being steadfast in the face of the racism and the settler colonialism. We must end all security, military, and intelligence cooperation with the United States of America. This includes cooperation with AFRICOM and the naval cooperation here at Simonstown, if we want this democracy to survive and not being a victim of United States regime change. We acted decisively through our action at the International Court of Justice against the apartheid state of Israel for genocide it commits against the people of Palestine. We must act decisively in the face of this act because it is an attack and we must recognize it as such before it is too late.
Thank you, honourable member. I now recognize the speaker from the UAT.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Progressive Caucus. Khotso, Ma-Afrika. This move by USA government is yet another manifestation of neo-colonial oppression, echoing the historic exploitation and subjugation of African nations by the Western power and their local allies, the white Afrikaner minority in South Africa. UAT called upon South African Minister of Mineral Resources to implement strict measures to protect our mineral wealth. The time has come for the paradigm shift where African nations control and dictate terms of their resources. We must reject the system that benefits foreign corporates while leaving our people in poverty. Furthermore, UAT urged the President Cyril Ramaphosa to take lead in mobilizing African leaders to convene a summit aimed at formulating Pan-African strategy for mineral resources utilization. Our resources must be our bargaining power against external economic threats and political blackmail. We propose that African leaders adopt a unified approach to resource management, ensure that our natural wealth serves as a foundation for economic liberation and industrialization. This decision by Trump administration should serve as a wake-up call for all African nations. It is high time that our leaders take decisive stand to secure our mineral wealth for benefit of our people. The wealth of our continent, gold, platinum, diamond, uranium, the rare earth of minerals, must no longer be auctioned to foreign powers who offer aid with one hand while tightening shackle economic dependency with another hand. The U.S. decision to cut aid should not be viewed as a loss, but rather as an opportunity for African self-reliance. We must refuse to be perpetual recipients of the conditioned assistance that compromise our sovereignty. Instead, let us build strong inter-African economic alliance, invest in our industries, and assert control over our destinies. UAT stands firm in its commitment to economic liberation, Pan-African unity, and the defense of African dignity. We call all African nations to reject the Western intimidation and rally together in reclaiming African wealth for its people. Kandi mambo!
The next speaker is the Honorable Malema. Honorable Malema, will you just take a seat? I see the hand of the Chief Whip of the Democratic Alliance. Let me just attend to that matter. Now, order, honourable members. Let me hear the honourable member.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, if I remember correctly, some years ago, a convention was established that a member cannot speak twice in a debate. I would just like your clarity. I would just like clarity on that matter from you. Thank you.
Honourable member, may I refer to a debate on the budget vote of the President on the 31st of May 2023, where a ruling was made that the former member Shavambu be given another opportunity to speak using the remaining EFF time, and after discussion the opportunity was granted. However, at the same time the matter was referred to the Chief Whip's Forum for further discussion and then also possibly to the subcommittee and the Committee on Rules. That matter has not been resolved. However, let me also add that in terms of Rule 9, Sub-Rule 1, conventions and practices relating to the business of the House and its committees and forums are established by agreement amongst political parties and parliamentary office bearers and may be varied by agreement amongst them and reviewed from time to time as decided by the Rules Committee. This is thus a matter that the Chief Whip's Forum, Honourable Chief Whip of the largest party, should attend to, so that we then proceed in the 7th Parliament with a common understanding. In light of that, the Honourable Malema may proceed with his speech.
Thank you very much. House Chair, I understand why the representatives of imperialist forces will want to silence this voice. And that's why they will stand up to raise unnecessary questions. House Chairperson, the first remark we wish to make is that there was a very little engagement politically. If anything, People want to blackmail us about aid and all sorts of things. But they know very well that there is no reason related to any wrongdoing by South Africa which has led to USA cutting its own aid. You can't say Donald Trump must be elected today and the following day he makes executive orders, and then you come here and blame the South African government as if the South African government did not do anything in between. That was a predetermined outcome where he wanted to come into office and punish South Africa for its position on Palestine and many other issues. We must be very clear that we are not going to agree to any form of bullying by anyone. It's a lie that there is farm killings in South Africa. Actually, those who are married in farms and owning farms, they kill each other for money, for policy monies. The farmers themselves kill each other for greedy reasons. The farm workers kill the farmers because they rape them in exchange for money and do not pay them, like Eugene Terreblanche did when he raped a farm worker and did not want to pay. We cannot be told that there are farm murders in South Africa when the farmers themselves are actually killing the farm workers. It was a white farmers who killed 2 women in Polokwane and fed them to the pigs. It's a complete lie that white people are being killed in South Africa. If anything, white people live in privilege, and that's what Donald Trump knows. You cannot say Donald Trump is misinformed. They've got the best intelligence equipment in the whole world. They even have a military base next to South Africa in Botswana to listen to every conversation we have. They can tell you what is in private conversation in the executive and everywhere else. They don't need AfriForum. They are using AfriForum as a scapegoat to punish us politically. And we ought to be very clear about that. When the aid came into South Africa at the first place, it was not to help Africans. It was imperialist forces putting the aid into South Africa so that they can control South Africa. And use that aid to always say to you, if you take a political stand against the imperialist forces, we'll always cut the aid. So we ought to have known even then that we're not supposed to entirely rely on the USA. I'm very happy that the Minister of Health is speaking about possible interventions that can be made to avoid that aid of America. We can do with every help, but we will never accept help that say we must allow the perpetuation of white privilege. We cannot allow the whiteness to prevail in South Africa because we want to save life. We will save life. America did not save us during apartheid. Children were murdered in 1976. Children were murdered in the 80s. Where was America against apartheid? If America had anything to save an African life, it's a lie. They never wanted to save us. They were never there for us before. Palestine was there for us. Cuba was there for us. Russia was there for us. America will never choose friends for us.
Honorable
We will
member,
choose our own
your
friends.
time
Thank
is
you
now
very much.
expired. Thank you. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. The next speaker is the Honorable Kumbaka.
Honorable members, we have come before this House today to affirm our unwavering commitment to building a better South Africa, a better Africa, and a better world. The African National Congress, at its 55th National Conference, resolves that despite the many challenges we face in our continent, we remain confident in Africa's future. We believe that Africa will continue to grow and thrive and will become a new frontier for global production and development. We also assert that in order to build a better world, All global, political, developmental, and financial institutions must be fundamentally overhauled to serve the needs of all countries and all peoples. The ANC's 2024 election manifesto reaffirmed our commitment to supporting development and peace efforts on our continent and across the world, strengthening trade and investment links with other countries, and working towards the reform of international bodies. We also committed ourselves to increasing the voice of developing countries in multilateral institutions and advancing progressive internationalism and solidarity with the peoples of Palestine, Western Sahara, Cuba, and other progressive nations. Now, honorable members, on the 7th of February 2025, the President of the United States of America signed an executive order to firstly stop providing aid or assistance to South Africa and to promote the resettlement of Afrikaner refugees to the US. This order was based on the following allegation, and I quote, "Shocking disregard of the Republic of South Africa's citizens' rights through the recently enacted Expropriation Act 13 of 24 to enable the government to seize ethnic minority Afrikaners' agricultural property without compensation," close quote. Honorable members and fellow South Africans, it is obvious that President Donald Trump's order was based on the misinformation by the South African racist groups, namely AfriForum and Solidarity, who are the non-governmental wing of the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus. The DA has also recently completed a bogus working visit to the United States of America, and some members seated here today were part of that pseudo process. We need to state categorically to all white supremacist political parties and their right-wing NGOs that in terms of Section 84 of the Constitution, which is the powers and functions of the President, is that foreign policy is the exclusive domain of the state. Even Oranje is not a state, it is a farm in the banks of the Orange River in the Republic of South Africa. South Africa is a sovereign republic with a head of state who is President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa. As the ANC, we reiterate the President's words in his State of the Nation address speech that we will not be bullied. Honorable members, the decision by the United States government to hold aid in South Africa and to invite so-called Afrikaner refugees presents an opportunity for our nation to reaffirm its sovereignty and also strengthen economic resilience and deepen strategic partnerships. While international cooperation remains important, South Africa has the capacity to drive its own developmental agenda, aligning with our long-term vision for a self-sufficient, prosperous, and globally influential nation. We must strive to chart our development path, focusing on industrialization, infrastructure development, job creation, and technological innovation. Our economic policies prioritize inclusive growth, sustainable development, and investment in key sectors such as energy and agriculture and manufacturing. We must mobilize domestic resources while forging partnerships that respect our national interests. Honorable members, South Africa remains a key player in multilateral organizations such as the United Nations, the African Union, and BRICS, and G20. We advocate for a free and balanced international system. We believe in a multipolar world where no single nation dominates global affairs. Through BRICS and the AU, we continue to push for reforms in global governance institutions like the UN Security Council, amplifying Africa's voice in decision-making on international peace, security, and development. Honorable members, the AU's Agenda 2063 provides a blueprint for a prosperous, integrated, and peaceful Africa. South Africa is committed to achieving continental and economic integration and intra-Africa trade, and most importantly, youth and women empowerment. The US decision will not deter us from our goal of regional collaboration, industrial growth, and investment in human capital. South Africa remains deeply committed to South-to-South cooperation while strengthening economic and diplomatic ties with nations in the global South. By expanding partnerships with countries in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, we reduce dependency on Western aid and foster trade, investment, and knowledge-sharing initiatives. BRICS in particular provides an alternative platform for financing development projects, supporting infrastructure and enhancing economic stability outside of traditional Western financial institutions. South Africa's engagement with the global community is guided by key principles. These include the respect for the sovereignty of the state and ensuring that all nations have the right to self-determination and independent decision-making. Furthermore, we advocate for non-interference in the internal affairs of other states and the principle that domestic issues should be resolved by the people of that country without external imposition. Bantu baseMzantsi Afrika, as I close, Steve Biko says, and I quote, The great powers of the world may have done wonders in giving the world an industrial look, but the great gift still has to come from Africa, giving the world a more human face. Let's continue with our efforts on the global stage to dismantle the legacy of colonialism and imperialism. The halt in US aid is not a setback, but an opportunity to assert our independence, reinforce multilateralism, and deepen South-to-South cooperation. South Africa will continue to lead in Africa's economic transformation, advocate for a fair and just global order, and champion the principles of self-reliance, regional integration, and sustainable development. Our commitment to building a better Africa and world remains unwavering, and it will remain like that. We will not be bullied, and we will continue with the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Paul.
Honourable Chairperson, I stand at this podium today as a proud South African, invested in the unity, stability, and prosperity of this great nation. We as South Africans must never allow ourselves to become divided by external actors who embody ideals that are diametrically opposed to our democratic values. We as South African political leaders have an obligation to represent our national interest, to work together to foster unity and growth, and to improve the lives of all of our people by ensuring that we act with wisdom. Honourable members, the sudden termination of PEPFAR funding last week sent shockwaves throughout the world, and I reiterate the deep sympathy expressed by my colleagues for the more than 15,000 healthcare workers who have now lost their jobs without fair notice, and the hundreds of thousands of patients who have lost access to critical life-saving care. For many decades, the US played a vital role in our economy as a key trade and investment partner and a global ally in the fight against HIV. We are deeply grateful to the American people and previous US administrations for having supported millions of the most vulnerable South Africans with such care and grace for so many decades. Whilst it is absolutely the prerogative of the US administration to put America first, the immediacy of the aid termination without adequate notice that allows African governments to implement contingency plans is going to reverse decades of progress made in the fight against AIDS and is, in my view, deeply inhumane. It is difficult to imagine that one group of South Africans could be offered refugee asylum by the same administration that has now cut off life-saving care that keeps hundreds of thousands of vulnerable South Africans alive. This action is simply not consistent with our long-standing shared democratic values. Whilst acknowledging the callousness of this recent action, it goes without saying that the previous ANC-led government did little to defend democratic values in a way that builds strong and reliable partnerships. Fraternizing with the enemies of the very values upon which our constitutional democracy is founded has indeed come at the expense of our country's international reputation and is now directly undermining our future economic growth prospects. Honourable Speaker, the GNU presents an historic opportunity for a reset, including a full reform of South Africa's economic and foreign policy agenda, ensuring that together as South Africans, we seize the moment to charter a more stable and prosperous future. As proud South Africans, we must recognize that the unity of our nation is fundamental to this debate. The formation of the GNU is a testament to the strength of our democracy in South Africa and our collective determination to place the interests of our people above partisan politics. This has not been easy. South Africa's foreign policy under the leadership of the GNU must now focus on prioritizing our national interest in order to address our developmental needs. This does not mean aligning with any single set of global alliances, but rather working to position South Africa as a consistent and a reliable partner for trade, economic investment, and global cooperation. As Africa's most resilient economy and democracy, South Africa is a crucial hub for international businesses, including over 600 American firms that have chosen our nation as their base of operations. The increasingly interconnected and transactional world that we function in today compels mutual cooperation. Pandemics, food insecurity, and climate change require partnership. The maintenance of the global rules-based international order requires partnership. Alliances amongst democracies have and will continue to be necessary in maintaining global peace and stability. In this increasingly hostile time, South Africa must now lead from the front. In representing my great country's interests, I would like to call on the United States government, including the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to recognize the strategic importance of maintaining strong ties with the global community of democracies, because the future of our world depends on this. Thank you.
Honourable Members, the last speaker is the Honourable the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation.
Thank you, House Chairperson. It was a great sign of Africa, President Kwame Nkrumah, who once said, "We face neither east nor west, we face forward." These honourable members is the foreign policy outlook of the Republic of South Africa. Indeed, we as South Africa face neither east nor west, we face forward and we are moving forward. We welcome this pivotal debate called by Honourable Malema. While we acknowledge the invaluable contribution of PEPFAR to our health system and the whole continent, we should not bemoan the sovereign decision of the United States of America to revise its US aid policy, but seize this moment as a catalyst for change. We must act in unison to mitigate the negative impact of the US aid cuts. We must seize this moment to reconceptualize our global system and ensure that our domestic imperatives serve our nation efficiently and sustainably. Section 231 of the Constitution provides that foreign policy is the responsibility of the National Executive, which is vested in the President. Ms. Powell, the GNU does not supersede the Constitution. There is no party in the GNU that can go to any foreign country to represent South Africa's interest. You can go represent the interest of your party. It's a right that all parties have, but not the national interest of the people of South Africa. Our Constitution protects the rights of all citizens to protest as we used to protest to fight against unjust laws of apartheid. There is nothing unjust in our Constitution for Solidarity and AfriForum to protest for in Washington. Our struggles were for the common good of all and not for a select race. They have positioned themselves against the people of South Africa. As we mark Human Rights Month, we remain committed to the democratic socio-economic transformation agenda of our country to reverse the legacy of colonialism and apartheid dispossession, discrimination and marginalization. Our Constitution enjoins us to build a just and equitable South Africa in which all shall share in its prosperity. Honourable House Chair, we remain steadfast in advancing international peace and security through inclusive dialogue and peaceful political settlement of disputes in the African continent and beyond. Honourable Speaker and members, for 30 years, South Africa and America enjoyed sound bilateral relations. Whenever we had differences, we tackled them through constructive dialogue. Just as we value the strategic partnership with the US, so we do with countries from the global north. This is encapsulated under the pillar of North-South dialogue in our foreign policy. In short, it is about dialogue and partnership, not paternalism or imperialism. We place great value on our sovereignty, independence and autonomy, while committing to engagements with all states, including the United States. Honourable House Chair, in terms of our policy orientation, we are not in place of confrontation and antagonism. We are in the business of diplomacy and dialogue. But this should never be viewed as timidity and weakness. We will continue to remain firm in this regard. Hence our President's mantra that we will not be bullied. The US is South Africa's biggest trading partner in the world after China. There are 601 US firms that have invested in South Africa, many using South Africa as a gateway to other African countries. These companies range from technology and finance, manufacturing and industry, healthcare and pharmaceutical, energy and mining. Their investment is a huge testament of confidence in South Africa's potential for growth and development. South Africa is the largest exporter to the US in the African continent. South Africa-US bilateral trade stands at 21 billion rand in 2023. South Africa also exports to the US 13.9 billion rands. We import at the value of 7.2 billion rands. South Africa's global exports are distant for US average 2021 to 2023. From 2019 to 2024, the US ranked as South Africa's agricultural exports destination. South Africa exports to the US platinum, motor vehicles, reaction initiators, ferrolus, citrus, jewelry, nuts, chemicals, wines, engines and turbines, and ships and boats. There are currently about 22 South African companies invested in the US, providing about 6,900 jobs. So the relationship is mutually beneficial. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way traffic. There is huge exchange of knowledge between South Africa and the US universities. That is mutually beneficial. We've gained a lot in the exchange of new technologies between the two countries. It is a country who can continue to gain in the field of new technologies and taking our country to greater heights. In the context of multilateral trade, South Africa remains an active champion of reforms that prioritize development and equity. Our worldview is therefore universal and not narrow. We are concerned with the well-being of others as well-being is linked to ours too. Speaker, the world is rapidly changing. Interdependence is pitted against competition. Cooperation is being shifted in favor of conflict. For us, values are placed at the altar of transactions. A growing body of evidence indicates that the actions of the current US administration can be understood through what is preferred as the Project 2025. To elaborate, Professor Albert at Princeton University, whose research and teaching focus on political campaigns and public policy, argues that nearly all actions taken in the President Trump's second administrations were outlined in 2022 in a plan called Project 2025. Here is an extract on US aid from that plan, and I quote, US foreign aid has been transformed into a massive and open-ended global entitlement program captured by and enriching the progressive left. The next conservative administration should scale back US aid global footprint by at a minimum returning to the agency's 2019 pre-COVID-19 pandemic budget level. It should de-radicalize US aid programs and structures and build on the conservative reforms instituted by the Trump administration. Close quote. There is no question that executive orders churned out rapidly are in step with this mandate. In addition, speeches by US office bearers illustrate a notable shift towards this perspective. South African government has maintained peace as the only viable solution to the Ukraine conflict. We were cajoled in isolating Russia, even to the point of being accused of arming the Russians. As we speak, the United States of America is stating that the only peace that can be viable solution to the Ukraine conflict and exclusively engaging with Russia. What we called for earlier, now the world is moving in that direction. This current moment in geopolitics has proven that our principled, non-aligned foreign policy approach is the correct approach. We have to stand by our principle, no matter what, and it is because of this that everyone is now coming to the table, that all parties to the Ukraine conflict must be called back to have a meaningful dialogue and to achieve peace. Our response to this rapidly shifting sense should include collaboration and partnership and strategies to be less reliant on foreign assistance. We as a country have to build our own domestic capabilities to be self-sustainable. In 2022, the African Union adopted the new public health order aimed at promoting greater self-reliance in health agendas. It calls for, and I quote, strengthen public health institutions, domestic resource mobilization, local manufacturing of health products, health workforce development, respectful and action-oriented partnerships. This is the way forward and must be implemented by us as a nation and the African continent as a whole. Our experience with COVID-19 pandemic taught us a great deal. COVID-19 taught us that we must become self-reliant or face being at the mercy of rich nations in the West, who proved themselves capable of acts like holding life-saving vaccines and giving us Africans the leftovers. It must not happen again, and it will not happen. We, under the leadership of Minister Mtwaledi, we must continue to build self-reliance in our manufacturing capabilities to respond to these challenges. We owe it to ourselves and future generations to build a robust, self-sufficient and sustainable health infrastructure. The gains we have made over the last 2 decades are fragile. Without sustained investments to bolster the national response to pandemics and viruses, the future human and economic costs will be heavy. As the Minister of Health has already highlighted in the debate, we must continue to be self-sufficient to safeguard our continent's future. But in the spirit of progressive internationalism, we will engage all, including the country that will succeed us as the G20 president, the United States of America, not only at home, but also in terms of enhancing global health security. It is a great privilege that this opportunity occasioned by these shifts takes place at a time when we hold the G20 presidency. We will choose Ubuntu diplomacy, emphasizing mutual benefit, solidarity, and cooperation. We will not give up on equal rights and equal opportunities and equal rules as a basic principle of multilateralism. We will continue to ensure that we build alliances across the globe to make our economy self-reliant and respond to the investment challenges that we will continue to face. We face neither East nor West, so we will continue working with the countries in all countries to build multilateral platforms. We shall fight to be free. We will build our own society, in our own society. We will sing our own song, Amandla Awetu. This is an extract, Sing Our Own Song, written and performed by the British reggae UB40. The song was created as an anti-apartheid song, faced censorship in South Africa, featuring the ANC rallying cry, Amandla Awetu. It is regarded as a significant protest song of that era. Our foreign policy echoes this spirit. We will indeed build our own society. In our own society, we will sing our own song. We must build our own self-reliance so that we can sing our own song. We must continue to march forward, build industrialization that will respond, and continue to cooperate and build partnerships across the globe that will respond to these emerging challenges. Amandla Ngawetu. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, that concludes this debate. The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Sport, Arts and Culture on Oversight visit to Eastern Cape from 8 to 11 October 2024.
The Chairperson of the Committee, the Honourable Mglua, to introduce the report.
Honourable Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee on Sport, Arts and Culture conducted an oversight visit to the Eastern Cape from 8 to 11 October last year. This report details our findings, observations and recommendations following our engagements with various institutions and projects in the province. Our visit was prompted by concerns raised regarding heritage infrastructure projects jointly implemented by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and the Public Works. Among these, the Sarah Bartman Center of Remembrance, a long outstanding project, has required urgent attention. The committee findings on Sarah Bartman Center is as follows. The project remains incomplete after nearly a decade, with costs escalating from 164 million to 279 million. Site neglect, poor security and financial mismanagement have further delayed the progress. A new contractor appointed in early 2024 faced financial and logistic issues leading to contract cancellations. There is a lack of accountability, consequence management, prolonging project delays. The committee recommendation to the Sport, Arts and Culture Department is to secure the site to prevent further deterioration, hold a high-level meeting between all relevant stakeholders to address the governance issues, implement consequence management for officials responsible for delays of mismanagement, review of contractual clauses 38.55 and 38.56 to prevent unnecessary expenditure. During the committee's oversight to the South African Library for the Blind, the institution serves as over 1 million visually impaired South Africans. While the committee observed a recent refurbishment in the building to improve facilities, funding in all cases remains a challenge. High cost for braille book production, a shortage of skilled languages, professionals and insufficient training for teachers of visually impaired students are key concerns. During our deliberations, the committee recommended that the department should work close with the Department of Basic Education to support visual impaired learners. It is also recommended that the department should address the ongoing salary stagnation unchanged for almost 16 years. Honorable members, despite an expanded mandate to include all South African language, committee members raised concerns on the finding limitations of our Mwazi Museum, the ability to collect and preserve literature, the rising of municipal cost, outdated infrastructure, and inadequate maintenance support, and a lack of public engagement. During our visit to the Mandela Bay Theatre Complex, members learned that the theatre remains closed for refurbishment, the high operational costs and rental expenses for 220,000 rand a month, adding to this financial strain, while delays in capital works continue to affect developments. This theatre complex must seek cost-effective space alternatives and strengthen their financial management. Something drastically needs to be done to prevent further audit disclaimers. Honorable Chairperson, the committee also visited the various sport infrastructure. These visits reveal a mix of well-managed and neglected projects. One of the committee's favorite facilities and project managed by a female is the legendary Marcel and Kenton-on-Sea sport fields. It has thrived under community ownership. This project has shown that collaboration between municipalities, federations, and educational institutions remains essential. Honorable Chairperson, the Eastern Cape holds immense cultural and sporting potential. The report calls for decisive action and enhanced service delivery and accountability. The Committee on Sports, Arts and Culture will continue to monitor these developments and ensure that South Africans benefit from these initiatives. I hereby, Honorable Chairperson, table this report for consideration. I thank you.
Thank you. Political parties wishing to make a declaration will now have an opportunity to do so. The usual times for declaration of votes will apply. The DA.
Honourable Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee on Sports, Arts and Culture's oversight visit to the Eastern Cape was marked by shock, heartbreak and horror. We witnessed the complete misuse and disappearance of state funds along with the abandonment of critical public infrastructure. My speech, therefore, reads more like a eulogy than it does anything else. We visited the Sarah Baartman Center for Remembrance in Hankey, meant to honor the legacy of Sarah Baartman, a Khoi woman who comes from the Gamtoos Valley, who was brutally robbed of her dignity and exploited in European freak shows. Upon arrival, we were met with the misspelling of her name at the entrance. And I want to say that if they could fumble her name at the entrance, logic would dictate that they would fumble the money as well. And the site itself was riddled with shoddy workmanship, dilapidation, and complete dereliction. And to our horror, Sarah Bartman's gravesite had been tampered with. Speaker, I want to paint the picture of what 243.7 million rand of taxpayer money had been used for. It went to contractors and consultants who ran into cash flow problems and could not get the job done. Contractors and consultants who did not even hire security from Hankie itself. Contractors and consultants who have yet to be held accountable. Speaker, 243.7 million rand is the equivalent of 950 RDP houses. It is also the equivalent of 70 kilometers of tarred road. And it is also the equivalent of giving every single house in Hankie solar power. This Center of Remembrance had the opportunity to bring meaningful economic growth to the residents of Hankie. But the local tourism and construction sectors would have also grown massively if it weren't for misuse and mismanagement on such a large scale. Honorable Chairperson, we must think of the bread we could have put on the table of the residents of Hankie. We must think of how bringing more economic growth to this town would have brought economic activity and jobs to the town. Because behind every single job is a face. And behind every single face is a family. And behind every single family is a community. And if we could change the reality of the community of Hankie, we could bring jobs to the community of Hankie through the completion of this center. And after visiting this center, the committee visited multiple different sporting projects that were considered as sports infrastructure. Honorable Chairperson, as I stand here today, I would like to confirm to you that what we visited was the opposite of sports infrastructure. In Addo, we saw a multi-purpose center that will cost taxpayers 32 million rand. It features a soccer field that has more potholes and speed bumps than a road in the city of Johannesburg. And it also features changing rooms that are about 100 meters away from the netball courts on the other side of the field. Half constructed with an incomplete pavilion which has incomplete changing rooms in an incomplete sports complex. And this 32 million rand project stands in stark contrast to the two centers we saw at Kenton-on-Sea that cost 7 million rand each. Both fully functional and both absolutely operational. So the question remains, who are these projects about? Are they about the consultants, the contractors and the cadres? Or are they about the communities and the taxpayers that pay for these projects? It is unfathomable that our communities can be expected to be satisfied with these facilities that they desperately need. Honorable Chairperson, among others, we visited the Nelson Mandela Bay Theatre Complex, an entity under the department that gets horrible audit outcome after horrible audit outcome, and believe it or not, costs 220,000 rand in rent per month to conduct its operations in rent. The sites mentioned in the speech, Honorable Chairperson, represent one need, the need for an urgent evaluation of government spending and efficiency. As the DA, we support and welcome the committee's consistent recommendations to name the contractors and consultants responsible for these projects, as well as calling for urgent consequence management. This is in the name of good governance and safeguarding the interests of our communities and all tax-paying South Africans. The DA supports this report.
The MK.
Fambile na komiti ya hina Eastern Cape ya langutisa miako leyo ka yi nga helangi ku fana na Sarah Bathman kokwani wa hina. I mfumo muni wo fuma swisiwana? I mfumo muni wo ka wu nga heti miako ya vaakatiko hi ku angarhela? 243 million is too much. Aka muako nga helangi ku nga ri wona ntsena jikelele Afrika-Dzonga hinkwako swilo leswi n'wina mi swi endlaka va ANC a swi humi ndleleni mi ri amandla vanhu va ku ma hina ku vende ya mandla awenu not for community of South Africa miako hinkwayo leyi mi nga yi endla loko mi susi President Jacob Zuma mi teki miako liya ya vanhu va South Africa mi endla damu ra ti-corruption hikuva a mi heti miako ya n'wina a mi hloniphi vavasati mani lavaya va ye va dlawa ku vava va xanisiwa va endliwa nhlonge n'wina na namuntlha a mi la ku heta mi thola tikontraka hi ku hambanahambana ku ri mi kota ku dya loko hi lava ku lunghisa miako hinkwayo leyi nga kona Afrika-Dzonga n'wina va ANC mi nga onha loko hi ya ka ti-site visit a mi yi hikuva hi n'wina mi nga onha. You cannot go to site visit when you know you are the one who did the problem to not unfinished project. Inwina. Namuta mi yima la mi ti buma vanhu va ANC. My former IA. You are the cause of the problem in South Africa. Any structure, the whole non-province is because of you and you. Namutlha mayima mi buma hi swilungu swa n'wina ku vendeni vaakatiko va Afrika-Dzonga va le ku hluphekeni vavasati mi va hloniphi mi lava ku fuma swisiwana mina vukungundwani byo ka byi nga heli loko mi endla ti-project ta n'wina mi lava mali ya ku campaign hi yona ni vula n'wina va ANC mi endla vukungundwani how can you do the problem on your own? Today you are lying to the people of South Africa. You say, we'll do this and this. Because you are modifying your corruption. I know you. You know me. Logo ingena ka ti project hinkwato kufana nele Pulukwani Agiani shitela moka mi nga hetangi unfinished project for you. GNU, we mean government not united. Va kungena sweswi ba ti project ya Sarah Baartman yi teka over 10 years mi nge le ku yi heteni. Namutlha you are smiling. You are smiling like it's a wedding, it's a party. The project that ati helangi. Mitlela njani mitiva ku ri you've been stealing and stealing and stealing. How can you sleep? What are you dreaming? Because
thank you, honourable member. Your time has now expired.
Nikesin, mara everything is aye.
The EFF.
Greetings to the CIC and the mighty EFF. The economic freedom fighters fully and actively participated in the Eastern Cape Oversight visit and therefore agrees with the observations and recommendations presented by the report. The report gives us a proper diagnosis of challenges faced by the entities we visited. The EFF further appreciates that a number of its inputs and policy positions have found expression in the recommendations made by the report, and as such, it became easy for the committee to adopt our proposed slogan, #We follow the money. A commitment to accountability that has been missing for far too long under the ANC majoritarian rule that bullied the adoption of false and cover-ups reports. House Chair, the report paints a gloomy and painful picture of neglect, disarray, abandonment of a project named after one of the country's worthy ancestors, Sarah Baartman. It's a report that uncovers the wickedness of greed and corruption that has led to siphoning of more than 200 million of South African taxpayers' money without accountability. Inasmuch as the issue of accountability is emphasized, the EFF calls for the Speaker of this House to write to both Minister Dean McPherson and Minister Gayton McKenzie and invite them to come and give full report to this Parliament on what they have since done. Firstly, to hold their departments accountable. Secondly, on what clear plans do they have to complete the center that has taken over 10 years without completion, but ballooning costs. House Chair, during the entire visit, what became commonly observed, it is how arts and culture component is constantly neglected, especially when it comes to infrastructure development. To bring the neglected arts and culture sector to the fore, in line with the EFF's manifesto on sports, arts and culture, and the EFF's non-negotiable pillar on nationalization of strategic sectors of our economy, the EFF has collectively agreed to present a private member's bill before this House. The bill that seeks to establish a self-governing body by an act of parliament, similarly to SASCOC, which will be sector-based, fully accountable to parliament, and strictly governed by all relevant laws, including international laws and policies where South Africa is a signatory to such. The success of Marcel and Kenton on sea sport fields, they surely border on the need of
Thank
state
you, Honourable Member. Your time has now expired.
Against badly abused regulation of municipal supply chain.
Thank you.
EFF supports the report.
The IFP.
Honorable Chair, the IFP acknowledged the Oversight visit report. The visit provided critical insights into the state of the sport and heritage infrastructure, particularly Sarah Baartman Center of Memombre.